Good morning. Today is the 13th day of Nisan, which means that tonight we do bdikat chametz, which means checking for chametz. Of course, theoretically, this was for really checking if there's chametz in the house. That used to be possible up to maybe 150 years ago. Today it's no longer possible to do it just as this being the check for chametz, because we have so much stuff in our homes that it requires a few days earlier to clean them and make sure there really isn't chametz. And then we do the checking either on something really that hasn't been checked yet, or even in the places that have been checked. And according to Chassidus and Kabbalah, we place 10 small pieces of chametz, of leavened bread. Usually it's a good idea to wrap them up either in tinfoil or in a napkin, and they should be smaller than a kazayis. Kazayis is about yay big, and that's how we perform it. And the tomorrow morning, or any time before then theoretically, but last time is tomorrow morning at about 10:30. Or 11 o'clock, depending on where you are, we burn the last remnants of chametz. If you end up without having gotten rid of some chametz and you find it later, just take it out to the trash. That's until sometime around noon. After that, it is a good idea to burn it. If you can't, and you can't take it out to the trash, and because you don't collect anymore, or whatever the problem is, you can put it into some kind of detergent or other kind of water that will make it inedible, and that's usually enough. One of the things I wanted to mention just is that chametz is not only forbidden to be eaten; it's also forbidden from being enjoyed. The enjoyment is a completely different species of action. So, for instance, many of the shampoos that we use, or body lotions, or whatever it is, they have chametz in them, so we can't use them on Pesach. I don't know what they do in the United States. Here in Israel, we have they always put out a new line of shampoos and stuff that has kosher for Pesach. I don't know what they do there. You got to find out. Okay, anyway, so that was just a couple of things, and then hopefully tomorrow we will be able to meet. I'm hoping that you might be davening earlier. I'm not sure, maybe at the same time. However it is, just let me know and we'll coordinate. I want to get to...
Are we meeting at the same time tomorrow, davening?
Yes.
Okay, so it's at the same time tomorrow. Today we're in the third reading of Parshas Shemini. And I want to continue the same topic that we had yesterday, but we can't ignore what it says in the third reading, because this is a very dramatic reading. And this is a reading in which Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's two elder sons, meet their demise, trying to bring incense when they shouldn't have. And basically their reasoning was correct, that they said after every time that God appears, there is a requirement to bring incense, like after in the morning the daily sacrifice is offered, and the fire comes down from the sky, what we talked about yesterday. And so they reasoned that just as that happens every day, that afterwards the incense is brought inside the sanctuary on the golden altar, they should be doing the same thing now also. And they were correct in their reasoning, but they had not been instructed to do so. And that's a very interesting thing. We know that when we talk about anything that has to do with preempting God's will, there's always an issue, which is, on the one hand, like any parent, God wants human beings to be independent, in the same way that we want our children to be independent. So when it comes to our children, we would rather not have to tell them anything. We'd rather just be in a situation in which they would figure things out for themselves and act upon them, even if they do it not as well as we could have instructed them. That's the usual way that we treat our children. There is that dimension in the relationship between God and man also, that God is waiting for us to do everything that we can, and He wants us to figure it out. Not only does He want us to figure it out, but we're not going to study this here because it's a very big topic, but one of the first instructions that He gave Abraham was, walk before me and be whole, meaning walk before me, you lead the way, and I'm willing to follow whatever direction you want to go. All that is true when it comes to our fulfillment, what we call our lives, how we would like to imagine ourselves, how we would like to develop ourselves. These things, God is waiting for us to say, what do you want? It's very different from the way that many people describe it, as if somehow life is predetermined and you have to figure it out somehow. You have to crack the code. You have to figure it out. Cracking the code and figuring it out is all about a struggle within oneself to figure out what is it that my soul tells me is truly my mission in life. And once I'm able to do that, it aligns, or rather God says, I will align my will with yours. I want to fulfill the direction in which you want to go. And there's a famous statement from the sages, in a path that a person wants to follow, he is guided from heaven. Meaning they take you along the path that you want to follow. You have every authority, you have every independence, you have every autonomy to be able to follow the path that you want to follow. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, it doesn't mean it's going to be difficult, it just means that you have to decide. All that is when it comes to the fulfillment of my mission in the world. But there is another dimension to the world. For instance, we encounter it when it comes to the laws of nature, when we encounter it in other places. But there are also divine laws. And by setting up the tabernacle, the world was now different. There was now a dimension of the world where the difficulty was in following what God had commanded. And these are two different areas of life, as it were. They don't, in the beginning, we don't see how they actually connect. They're almost even contradictory. On the personal level, I have to struggle to define myself and define my path. On the more collective level, when it comes to our actions relative to God's will, there the struggle is to align myself with that will. And what happened here was that Nadav and Avihu, in a sense, had tried to have both the best of both worlds. In a certain sense, we do have the best of both worlds. We really do have this, but they let one lapse into the other, and so what they came to was a state in which they thought that since their logic was correct, they should act upon it. That would also be accepted by God, but that wasn't so simple. And when it comes to the tabernacle, when it comes to the holy sanctuary, things are not like that. There is a law, just like there's a law of nature. There is something that needs to be followed, and it needs to be discovered by God's revelation, and not through just an inner calling. Now, it's not to say, by the way, that this is essentially wrong. It means that there may be a very high price to pay. There were many people who followed their inner calling even when it came to following God's will. They decided that what God expected from them was a certain thing, which maybe He didn't, and they paid a very high price for it. But in the end, they were fulfilled. It's not that there was anything wrong with it. And there's such an opinion in the sages also that Nadav and Avihu didn't do anything wrong per se, meaning that they're not, they don't need atonement. It's not like they performed a sin. They went very strongly with their inner sense of what was right, even when it came to God's will, and there was a price to pay for that. And that's the usual understanding. Now, this goes into a topic that on Pesach is very essential. We started to raise the question yesterday. Who is responsible for the redemption? Meaning, how is it possible that after at least 210 years in Egypt, the Jews weren't able to rise up and leave. How is it possible that we now, at the very end of our exile, why is it not possible that we just get up and leave? There's something very strange going on. People don't really believe that it's possible, maybe, but there are a lot of people who do believe, who do think that it's possible to change phases in our consciousness, to come to something new. And here too, we come to the same idea that even though the redemption is in our hands, there is something that needs to come from above. Meaning, it can't just be the fulfillment of human ambition. The redemption is also a change in the structure of the world. It's a change in the natural order of the world. There's many things that will change, and these also have to be, let's call it, underwritten by God Himself. So there is a level of will that, as much as I want, as much as I try, as much as I endeavor, and many people with me, in the end, like the Rebbe also, he did everything he could, and then at the end he said, "But I'm at a loss because I don't know why it's not happening." But there was never a thought that, well, if it's not happening, it's just up to us. There is this delicate balance always between the fulfillment of human ambition, of human need to advance, to go forward, and a reciprocal announcement, as it were, or sign from above that this is really accepted by the Almighty. How this comes together in Pesach, God willing, we'll see tomorrow. But again, the beginning of the point is that even coming out of Egypt, you would have thought after the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth plague, seventh plague, eighth plague, they already had enough power to come out. And yet, there had to be a sign. They were waiting for something more. And that sign was what God had told Moses in the very beginning, that the only plague He mentioned at the burning bush was the plague of the newborn. And when that happened, that was the sign that now was the time to leave. And they received specific instructions. You should be eating the Paschal lamb with all your belongings already packed, and with your sticks in your hands, and ready to walk, and ready to receive the sign, but you can't move a moment earlier. So tomorrow we'll look a little bit more at what exactly is it that happens at that moment, and why is it that the sages say that the night of the Seder is the most auspicious night during the year to reach the same state of mind in which the two can come together. Human ambition together with the will of God and the sign that comes from above. So we'll see that, God willing, tomorrow.